Welcome to Hear In Hanover, your all-access pass to everything happening in Hanover County. I'm your host, Kristen Smith Dunlop. Today we're going to talk about something that's been in the spotlight quite a bit in 2025, and that is water. As you know, if you live in the region, there have been some disruptions dating all the way back to January with Richmond's water treatment plant, and that has raised some legitimate questions and conversations from our residents about our water source, where does it come from, and are we capable of operating independently of Richmond? So we're going to have a candid conversation about that today with County Administrator John Budesky and Public Utilities Director Matt Longshore. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Can we start with the basics? Because I think there's still some education to be done about how our water system operates. We get some of our water from Richmond, not all of it. Can you kind of go through the basics of that?
When it comes to water supply, we have a 20 million gallon per day water contract with the City of Richmond. We also have a water treatment plant in our Doswell area that can produce up to 4 million gallons a day. And we have a contract with Hanover County where we can purchase up to 775,000 gallons per day. So that gets us close to almost 25 million gallons a day as far as capacity goes. But to get to the other point of the question is, we purchase or have the ability to purchase almost 80% of our water from our system from the City of Richmond. So when we purchase water, that comes into a supply line at our Lockwood pump station right near the 301 corridor, and that pumps directly into the Mechanicsville pressure zone. So we have 4 pressure zones. We have our Mechanicsville pressure zone, our Ashland pressure zone, Elmont, and our Doswell pressure zone. So our Mechanicsville pressure zone is the most heavily populated pressure zone, and of course that receives water directly from the City of Richmond. We have the ability to turn some pressure zones around as far as which way the water flows. We can flow water from our Ashland pressure zone, which is fed directly from our Doswell water treatment plant, into the Mechanicsville pressure zone, but it's just not enough capacity when it comes to million gallons per day. So that's really the fundamentals of how the water system works, and that's really why the water feed coming from the City of Richmond is such an important part of our system.
And we've talked about this before. It's not uncommon for municipalities to have redundancy in the system and to overlap that way, right?
That's right. Regionalization of water systems happens all over the place. And so in Central Virginia, for instance, a lot of the localities in the area, their systems are all tied together. So, Hanover County purchases water from the City of Richmond, and so does Henrico County. Goochland County purchases water from Henrico County. Powhatan purchases from Chesterfield. Chesterfield also purchases water from the City of Richmond. So there's a lot of interconnections between all the localities, redundancy built in. Hanover County specifically, because we do have a large allocation with the City of Richmond, again, that is why the city's water is so important to our water system.
So this year we've seen some issues with problems at the facility in Richmond, and that's left some of our residents frustrated. They want to know, well, why are we drawing water from Richmond? Why aren't we independent? Why are we not just pumping our own water?
Well, I think it's a fair question. We share some of the frustrations our residents share as well. But I think it's important to note that we've had this relationship with the city for over 25 years. We have not seen the issues of January 6th and subsequent issues in the prior 25 years. And so we did have reliability in service to our residents for many years. In fact, a number of the residents that have shared with me, they didn't even know that we were a partner with the city in receiving water from the city's plant all of these years. And I know we'll talk a little bit about the history of Hanover County considering reservoirs in the past and those kinds of things. But it's a fair question to be asked. And as Matt just explained in the more technical components of the system, we do have a water treatment plant in Hanover County. It just doesn't have the capacity that's needed to serve the entire county. And so even if we were to build a reservoir, you have to look at water treatment capabilities and costs and all of those kinds of things that go along with it. If you look at what Henrico has done in building a reservoir the Cobbs Creek Reservoir out in Cumberland County that will actually be a water storage facility for them. That project took 25 years to come to fruition. And back in the late 80s, 90s timeframe, when Hanover considered that, our resident and board at that time decided not to move in that direction, and subsequently have the contracts with the City of Richmond that have served us, and we're under contract for a number of additional years. And so as we look at these relationships, we have to also look back at what decisions were made in the past. But I think it's also important to say, okay, we have had these issues since January. They're issues we take extremely serious, and we should, and our residents should take serious as well. And so for us, it's more about where do we go from here? On this independence question, I think it's also really important for our residents to know this isn't an issue we waited until January 6th to start thinking about. Matt and his team have been looking at long-range water supply planning for years. And what are our options? And we do have plans to evaluate a reservoir in our own future plans. Cost and feasibility and all those things need to be a consideration. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about how the system works and who pays for what as part of that. But it's really important to know that independence, as Matt said, is not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, with water. There are ways through shared relationships that can be done successfully. We have learned, especially since January, that there's an additional level of oversight and effort needed to be made with our partners in the city that we get water from. And we have some plans to really look at that and what are our next steps going to be with that relationship.
Well, as we're doing that, let's just talk about if we were to consider becoming independent or building a reservoir, building a treatment facility that could take care of the entire county. What are we looking at? This isn't something that's inexpensive, and it's not a quick fix.
From a strictly utility perspective and a financial perspective, we've studied that many times through the years. As a matter of fact, we're getting some consultants to update some of the existing studies and see what those options look like. From the most recent numbers we have, we're looking at potentially $500 million to north of $500 million for a water treatment plant and a reservoir as it currently sits. So as far as the time frame goes, we're looking potentially 20 years. You may have 10 years just in permitting a reservoir, and that's with permitting through regulatory agencies, environmental agencies, whatnot. Then you have to get easements, and none of that is easy to do. It's a big lift. It's not saying we can't do it. It will take time. But you're looking at potentially 10 years in permitting and easements, and then you have to design the infrastructure, the facilities, and then once everything's designed, you have to go into construction and build it. And so, again, with the latest estimates we have, we're looking around $500 million in 20 years. That said, we're looking at other options to see what's available nowadays, see what's available in 2025. We're looking to talk with other localities and see if there's additional options to build in redundancy and resiliency in our system through infrastructure that's already in place. But we're also going to take another hard look at building our own treatment plan. And, is there any possibility to build a treatment plant without a reservoir? Would that still meet the needs of the county? And so we're looking at a bunch of different options to see if they meet the needs, to see how feasible they are technically, to see what the permitting timeframe looks like, and finally to see what the financial commitments will look like if we pursue different options. So we're looking to have some recommendations from those studies later on and provide those to the board, but that's something we're working on right now.
And if I can add to that, the financial feasibility is a major component of this discussion. And I think one of the things most of our residents don't fully understand is how does the utility system get paid for? And I think everyone that's a taxpayer in Hanover thinks they're paying for the utility system, which is not accurate. If you are a water customer on the public water system, you are paying for that water system through your rates. What you pay every other month to Hanover County, you're contributing towards that operation. If you're connecting new to the system, you pay a fee. those are the folks that subsidize and pay for the utility system. And so that's important to note that as we have a certain number of customers that are on the public water system, if you're on well and septic, you're not paying towards that public water system in our county. And a lot of our residents are on private wells throughout our county. Those customers would also have to bear the cost of that expanded capacity and treatment. So if we're talking about $500 million 20 plus years out, which may be more 20 years from now, we also have to be cautious and aware of customers' ability to pay for that service. So when we looked at this in the past, if you're paying, let's just say $1,000 a year now for that service, but it costs you an additional $1,000 a year for us to build out that capacity, how willing as a customer would you be willing to double your payments? And so obviously we're not willing to double the cost on our customers tomorrow. And that would have to be a phased and managed process. So we have to think about not only how do we create independence, but how do we do that in a way that's most feasible for the county at large and for our customers, so they're not overburdened with extreme cost either in that process. So it's a balance. We want to make sure that we're providing quality, reliable service to our residents, but there's ways to do that through the partnerships that Matt talked about and strengthening our relationship with our current partners.
Okay, let's talk about current partners. This month, the Board of Supervisors is holding a joint board meeting with Henrico County.
Yes, on June 11th, we plan to meet with Henrico County, and that was already planned before the most recent events where they had some challenges with their filters that caused boil water notices in Henrico County. We were really proud of our team that they were able to manage our system and not lose pressures and not have to go into boil water. But that's due to, one, I want to commend the city on good notice this time. We didn't have such good notice in January, and it led to us being behind the eight ball to add capacity to our system. Our team, with proper notice this time, was able to really work on our system and make sure that our customers were least impacted, and we didn't have to do a boil water notice. We did have to manage pressures throughout the system, and the team did a job that we're really proud of. However, the meeting with Henrico County is just what Matt said earlier. We're going to explore those opportunities for additional interconnects and resiliency in our system, but we're also going to talk about, as two of the largest customers of the city system and most impacted in the regional events that have occurred here since January, what is it that we need to do with our partners to assure their success? We're vested in the city operating a successful water treatment plant as customers, and we're committed to their success. So what does that look like? How can we partner with them to assure that long-term success? Because ultimately, it impacts our residents. And we're looking forward to meeting with Henrico County, starting that conversation, following that conversation up with further meetings with our partners in the city and with Chesterfield County and others. And I think this is a dialogue that's, while we had the benefit of a successful operation for 25 years, the recent events are unacceptable for our residents. And we look forward to those conversations, but I think you're going to see continued increased focus on assuring that success downtown. In our discussions with the mayor, he is committed to those operations. The new director is as well. And so I'm pleased with where we're heading in the future, but the past few months, there have been some serious concerns that we've all had. And we can't continue to be reactive. We got to work with them in a proactive manner, assure maintenance and operations are running strong. I believe the new mayor is committed to those efforts, and we're committed to be a partner in that success.
So is that regional oversight of what they're doing? Is that a possibility?
I think at this point, we've heard there's concerns from the governor's office. We've had concerns. Henrico has had concerns. What that looks like at the end of the day, you're going to hear terms like authorities, regional oversights, all those things are worthy of discussion. I think ultimately that whatever that oversight takes shape and looks like at the end of the day, it's ultimately ensuring that there are processes in place for successful day-to-day operations of the plant, making sure that capital is being done as timely as it can be, making sure maintenance is done on regular schedules, have proper operating procedures. We've been blessed in Henrico and Hanover to have strong operations, strong teams in place. What is it that we can do in partnership with the city to assure that they have the same long-term success? We learned through some of the recent events that as they look at pumps and other equipment. What can we do to make sure that we're working more cooperatively to share equipment, share technology, share experience, to make sure that the collective systems, not only the city's treatment plant, but all of us are better. And so I think that that's going to be a conversation that's already sort of ongoing now. We're going to further that conversation in our meetings with Henrico County and extend that to our partners with the city in Chesterfield. But I think at some point we need to assure that there are processes in place, and some level of further regional oversight is certainly going to be on the table for further discussion.
And Matt, you talked about this earlier about, looking at alternatives, but let's talk about the utility master plan. I mean, there's some things that have been in place before this happened back in January.
That's right. So we started updating the utility master plan last year. And as part of that process, we're updating models. We're updating a lot of things about the utility systems, but we're also updating water demand projections and a whole host of different things we look at when we plan water systems. So that process is in the works. Right now, we've initiated another process for our long-range water supply feasibility analysis. So what that analysis does is it looks at different options for long-range water supply, whether it's partnerships with other localities, whether it's another treatment plant in the county, reservoir, a whole host of options what we're looking at with that. Once we have the results of that study and that study's been presented to the board and we get some good direction on which options we want to pursue, the results of that study will end up making it into the master plan, and then we'll be planning capital projects around that. So both of those processes are in the works. We've got some exciting stuff going on with that. But again, like most things in the utility industry, it will take time. It will take time to study these options and to fully vet the options and to be able to bring quality recommendations to the board in due time. So that's where it stands right now. We're hoping to have some good stuff coming to the board later this year, early next year, as some of those studies progress. Be happy to give you some updates as we go along those lines.
So what is the takeaway you want for people who are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast? What's the important message you want them to leave with?
I hope our residents here, first, we hear them, that we have heard their concerns, we share their concerns, and we're committed to minimizing disruptions to their lives with their public water system. We've been successful for many years, and we will put processes in place to assure that long-term success for the future. And whether that's through our own planning, which has been ongoing for many years and will continue, strengthened regional partnerships. The Board of Supervisors, this is a top priority for them. And they're committed to whatever processes and providing staff resources and being a regional partner in this success. And so they have heard from our residents, we have heard from our residents, and we're committed to making sure that we have those processes in place.
As you said, work is being done, studies are underway, and this will be a developing story that we'll, of course, keep everyone updated on. So thanks for coming and talking with us and answering some questions that I think people have been looking to get answers to.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Kristen.
That is going to do it for us. We will see you next month in July here in Hanover.